with us. Max, good morning, man. Happy New Year. How are
Good,
you, buddy?
good morning. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm fine. So Max, help us understand something here. Did did Trump negotiate? Was he in talks with Putin about a hotel throughout and during the campaign and through November or not?
You would think if you were going to just lie about this Trump Tower to the Trump Tower in Moscow that your efforts to it, you would just, you would lie once, and then when it was exposed, you would then, you would just put all your cards on the table. But no, what they've done is said, no, 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 had no business dealings with Russia. And then the Trump Tower gets revealed. They said, well, we cut off talks in January 2016. Then suddenly it became June 2016, and now we have Rudy Giuliani basically telling the world that actually he was negotiating with the Kremlin, with Russia through the campaign. And what that means is that, all his, effort, pro-Russia sentiment, his attacks on NATO and other things during the campaign.
Right.
We don't know if that was Trump's genuine view or whether he was putting that out there in order to sort of maximize his chances of getting a business deal with the Kremlin, presumably after he lost the election. And so this is incredibly significant and shows just the amount of leverage that the clear leverage the Kremlin had on him, not just during the election, because the Kremlin would know this secret as well, but up until this very day, that the Kremlin knew that Trump was lying about his business dealings with Russia, and that is what we would call in the intelligence community, intelligence world, compromising information. That frequently intelligence services look to use compromising information to gain leverage over people, to then get them to act in their interest, not the interests of their country, or of the person's country. And we got to be freaked out that that's one of the things that's been going on over the last couple of years.
It is what's the legality on that though? Can you run for president and still do that? Still work with another country on a business deal like that without disclosing it?
Well, so I think where this gets into illegality is potentially that if Trump was acting in a way, if there was sort of official corruption, right? So if once he became president, if there was an understanding that Trump would act in a certain way in an official capacity, he hasn't changed his approach since the campaign. The most logical thing you would expect is, okay, maybe during the campaign when Trump thought he could get this business deal with the Kremlin, he softened his approach on Russia. But then you would say, okay, well then after he became president, he's been really tough. But he hasn't been. He's in fact hasn't said anything negative about the Russians, or very minimal. And so I think the big question of illegality is, did that extend into Trump having an official capacity? And that would be corruption. That would be, if not potentially worse, given Trump took an oath to the Constitution, and if he's violating that oath because they have leverage over him, I think that would be something that the Congress should be interested in. And so the illegality, I think, occurs after an election. But just the fact that he didn't disclose that to the American public, that he lied about it continuously, you have to understand, this isn't just about breaking laws. This is also about breaking an oath to the American public.
Your latest at the Moscow Project, folks at the website, the moscowproject.org. Your latest, Max Bergmann, is that Democrats need to start Trump-Russia hearings right now. Correct?
Yeah. One of the things that Republicans were very good at over the last 2 years in trying to protect the president is they didn't hold many public hearings. This wasn't Watergate, where Congress was serving as a co-equal branch and having public hearings continuously, public hearings that were in fact very useful
Right.
to the larger investigation into Watergate because they exposed new information.
Right.
And so Republicans have held hearings all behind, almost exclusively behind closed doors.
That's right.
Um, and and so
Purposely.
I think there needs some sunshine on the Russia scandal, partly for two reasons. One, that it's Democrats' duty as a co-equal branch of government to investigate and to expose what may be the biggest political scandal in American history. But the second is that the American public has kind of lost the plot a little bit on the Russia investigation. It's sort of, there's been so many turns, so many different names, so many different characters. It's been going on for such a long time. And the Mueller investigation is so secretive that having public hearings to kind of reintroduce the subject to the public in a way that I think is digestible, in a way where you're trying to sort of tell kind of a clearer narrative, I think is critical. And I think Congress is going to do that. I just think that this should be a major priority for them.
What about the counter argument that Democrats doing that will step on um, the Mueller investigation? That they need to do this in consultation with him and not step on him. I mean, that's one of the arguments that's being used to say Democrats should just kind of hold their horses.
Look, I think Democrats would need to coordinate with the Mueller investigation, but the idea that Congress shouldn't go forth, I think is wrong. Frankly,
Right.
because the press have been going forth in the past 2 years. Almost all the information we know about the Russia investigation comes from press reporting.
Right.
So there already is a kind of line of effort from the press that is maybe at times complicating things for the Mueller investigation, such as around this BuzzFeed story. And so life can be complicated, but that doesn't mean I think the benefit of doing so would firmly outweigh the cost.
Right.
And frankly, I think a large part of what Congress would be doing would be reacting to information that's already out there. It's less about exposing new stuff. It's more about putting people on the witness stand in front of the American public, having people explain what they did, and also having other expert witnesses to explain, what Russia's foreign policy, what Russia was doing, and there's so many different angles here. So I don't think that's going to step on Mueller's toes.
Well, and as far as Democrats right now making this case, even in terms of the State of the Union, that they're a co-equal branch of government, they're not any less co-equal next to Mueller and the Justice Department. So, right, I think they should do it. Lastly, what are your thoughts about the BuzzFeed article and Mueller's reaction to it?
So this has been one of those really confusing,
Hmm.
complicated twists and turns. Here's my basic take. I think it's abundantly clear that the president obstructed justice. I think it's also pretty clear that the president most likely directed Michael Cohen and to make this lie. I think the question is, did he do it directly? Is there actual documentation of it, or is this just is this sort of one person's word against another? I think there's a lot of ins and outs to that story. I think that it was really unusual to see the Mueller team come out and
Right.
rebuke the story. In retrospect, their rebuke was probably more targeted than it seemed at the time. It seemed like the sort of blanket accusation the story was false. But now all this information's coming out that they were, in fact, may have been pressured to do so by the White House. That Giuliani and others may have contacted the deputy attorney general and Rod Rosenstein and put pressure on Mueller to
Really?
deny the story. So I think it's kind of confusing. But I wouldn't let this sort of fight over this story, I think, distract from the broader reality of what we know is the president clearly has obstructed justice in this investigation. He fired the guy investigating him, James Comey, because of the Russia investigation. He's done a number of things. The lying about the June 9th meeting,
Hmm.
issuing the statement giving the statement to John Jr. which was clearly a lie. threatening to fire Mueller and Rosenstein. He's been the body of evidence that Trump has sought to undermine, obstruct investigation, I think, is very long, and so the story is eminently believable. Whether they got a detail or fact wrong, I think shouldn't distract from kind of the broader case here.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Max Bergmann, folks, the MoscowProject.org. Keep up with things there. Max, good to talk to you, man, and looking forward to continuing to look into all these matters with you throughout the year. Okay, man?
Great. No, thanks so much for having me.
All right, always a pleasure. Keep up the great work. The MoscowProject.org, folks. Max Bergmann. We'll be back. Sirius XM Progress 127 Resistance Radio. Get woke. Get ready for impeachment. This is MIP.